What is up, you sexy mother hubbards? Today, the UK slid back into recession. You might have seen that. Headlines everywhere. But some of the reporting on it is really interesting. It's like a case study in UK media bias. So let's examine how it's being reported and then see if we can get a few laughs out. So first off, what has actually happened? The UK has entered recession after a steeper than expected fall in GDP. Steeper than expected. Whose expectations were they? Or like, what were they expecting? If you look back at the previous OBR reports, it's like 0.1% growth. 0.12% growth. Oh wow, we're speeding ahead now, guys. Like, it's always framed like this. It's like, oh, it was steeper than expected. Oh, we've just inched it into recession. The other one I saw last night made me laugh was it was down to higher than expected borrowing costs. Just a weird ad hoc anomaly that borrowing now costs more for Britain. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the Tories horse-fucked the economy and now it costs us more to borrow money through bond sales. We have to pay people more money back in interest if we want to take their money to invest in our public services. Borrowing money is now more expensive because of Truss and Kwarteng. That is it. It's not, oh, it's higher than expected. That's just how it is now.
Oh, Ron. Well, the weirdest thing has happened to me.
Well, what is it now?
Well, I completely soiled my credit rating, and now all of the banks are charging me way higher interest.
I've told you this before, Stephen. You're a fucking idiot. So borrowing costs are higher, and the cost of servicing that debt, i.e. paying the interest payments to the bondholders, that is eating into our GDP now. But is Tory fiscal irresponsibility being blamed? Is it even being mentioned? No, it's all anomalies, isn't it? It's all like, well, these costs were higher than we expected. Then you've got this other angle, which is that it's the mildest recession in 50 years. Like, yes, we're technically in recession, but it's super mild. Like, I doubt you'll even notice it. Which, as Alexandreo pointed out earlier on today, is a stark contrast to how they report growth by the same amount, right? Like, if it's growth of like 0.1%, then they're like, well, you know, we're on our way. We are returning to growth, aren't we? Pop out the champagne, wine and cheese. Like, it's a change you should notice, right? Well, if it's a change that you should notice in that direction, then the same is true of this one. So what have we got? We've got borrowing costs were just inexplicably higher. We've got manufacturing and GDP was just lower than expectations for some weird reason. We've got it's not really a recession. It's just we're gently dipping our toe into the recession. It's not really, you won't even notice it. Now just put a pin in that for a second and just consider, right, if this was a Labour government, if a Labour Chancellor and Prime Minister had stewarded the British economy into recession against their own pledge, right? It's bad enough when you actually, you put it into recession, but when you've specifically stood outside the steps of number 10 and you've gone like, I'm going to make one of my pledges, one of my 5 pledges. We won't talk about the other ones in this video. It's one of my 5 pledges that I will get us back to growth. When it's your pledge and you're into recession. Oh my God, if that was a Labour Prime Minister, what would the media be doing right now? There'd be talk of same old Labour. They'd be saying, oh, you can't trust Labour with the economy. I've been telling you, how many years have I been telling you? You can't trust Labour with the economy. No, I think it's just a mild one, though, this one. No, it's not. It's that Labour are irresponsible with the chancellery, treasury stuff. You can't trust Labour. And this is what we mean on the left when we say that Labour are held to a higher standard. They have to keep their sheets whiter than white. Because when we talk about, rowing back on a pledge, right, on the 28 billion green stuff, which they've actually said, to be fair, they're like, we're not completely abandoning it. We can't put 28 billion up there as the figure anymore. It's basically the thing. When they do that, the press maul them, like, oh, he's abandoned. Like, what does he stand for? How many things have the Tories had to abandon or claimed that they were going to do and then later failed to deliver spectacularly? But Labour are seen, oh, you can't trust them. Can't trust Labour. So there's the 28 billion stuff. There's these instances of anti-Semitism this last week. Everyone's like, oh, they've got an anti-Semitism problem. They've got a racism problem in the Labour Party. He hasn't changed anything. He says he's changed the party. He hasn't changed shit. There's all of that stuff. What have the Tories done to combat racism in the last 13 years? Can you think of one way that they've actively made moves, put in place measures to address racism? Anything? So Labour are always held to a higher standard than the Tories. So it's not surprising, but it's never not enraging, you know? Like a day like today, it makes me just go like, do you know what? Burn down Fleet Street and shit in the ash.